It's 6 p.m. on a Friday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Choi. Let's start with the headlines. Seoul and Washington finally signed an agreement to set up working groups for talks on THAAD, and topping the list of topics are location, management, safety, and cost sharing of the missile defense system. At a joint commissioning ceremony for graduating military cadets, President Park Geun-hye once again sends a strong message to North Korea, urging the communist state to walk the path of genuine change and reminding the regime to abandon its nuclear ambitions as they will not guarantee safety for Pyongyang. Visibly frustrated over new UN sanctions imposed on the regime, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reportedly ordered his military to prepare to fire nuclear warheads at any time. However, experts are doubtful the Hermit Kingdom has the technology to do that. Our starting point today is the latest developments on the talks between South Korea and the U.S. to set a missile defense upgrade against the North. Seoul and Washington have signed a joint agreement to set up a joint working group. We have our defense correspondent Kim Hyun-bin standing by at the Ministry of National Defense in Seoul to tell us more. Hyun-bin, fill us in on the latest.
That's right, Daniel. Seoul and Washington signed an agreement earlier today to start official talks about the possible deployment of THAAD here in Korea.
As part of enhancing Korea-US missile defense readiness, we will discuss the possible deployment of THAAD, which will be managed by US Forces Korea.
The two sides discussed pre-requirements that need ironing out to deploy THAAD on the peninsula, including the location of THAAD, management, safety, and cost sharing of the U.S. missile defense system. The sides were co-headed by the South Korean Ministry's Director General Chang Kyung-soo and U.S. Forces Korea's Major General Robert Hiddlin. The first working group was held here at the ministry at 3 p.m. local time. And the ministry says that the deployment of THAAD is being discussed due to the increasing threats from Pyongyang and in response to the regime's fourth nuclear test and long-distance rocket launch earlier this year. Now, China and Russia have voiced their opposition to the deployment as the missile interceptor could pose a risk to strategic security. Now, China in particular has shown explicit irritation over the MD system, claiming that it could spy on Beijing's military posture. To this, Seoul and Washington have assured that THAAD is purely a defensive system.
Well, we'll need to drill it through China's thick outer layer that it is a defensive system that will not jeopardize their security concerns. Moving on, the short-distance projectile fired by North Korea on Thursday, Hyun-bin, they're believed to be new additions to the North's military hardware, we believe. Could you tell us more about that?
Well, that's correct. A military official says that around 8 short-range projectiles fired on Thursday are thought to be launched from North Korea's newly developed 300mm multiple rocket launcher. Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is believed to have presided over the launch at Wonsan, Gangwon-do province. Now, this new weapon has a range of up to 200 kilometers, and when fired from the border, can target the newly built U.S. base in Pyeongtaek in Gyeonggi-do province. Now, a military official says that the 300mm multiple rocket launcher is almost ready for placement on the front lines, and added that the South Korean military needs to come up with new countermeasures to neutralize the weaponry. Now, South Korea has been developing its own multiple rocket launcher known as Chunmoo, but the system only has a range of 80 kilometers, which will not have enough firepower to neutralize North Korea's newly developed 300mm multiple rocket launchers. Now, this is all I have for now. We'll bring more updates in the later newscast.
All right, Hyun-bin, thank you for bringing us up to date on South Korea's efforts to upgrade its defense capabilities against North Korea. Moving on, President Park Geun-hye has once again called on North Korea to give up its nuclear arms. At a joint commissioning ceremony for military cadets on Friday, she said the North must abandon its nuclear programs as the international community will no longer accept Pyongyang's provocations and nuclear development, imposing the toughest sanctions on the communist regime.
북한 정권은 핵무기가 체제를 보장한다는 그릇된 망상을 버리고 하루속히 진정한 변화의 길로 나오도록 다시 한번 강력하게 촉구합니다.
President Park said that the government will take all kinds of actions against the North until it gives up its nuclear ambitions and becomes a responsible member of the international community. The president also called on the military to show Seoul's determination against Pyongyang's provocations. Meanwhile, North Korea has come out with an official response to the UN sanctions adopted this week, the strongest against the communist state to date. In a statement released by North Korea's official Korean Central News Agency, Pyongyang said it will use various means to take merciless actions, which will also include physical means. The regime reiterated its stance, saying that its nuclear and long-range missile tests were acts of self-protection against the U.S. Pyongyang fired several short-range projectiles toward the East Sea on Thursday as the first military response to the UN sanctions. And their leader, Kim Jong-un, went a step further, issuing a stark order to the country's military to be prepared to fire nukes at any given time. According to our Connie Kim, this isn't the first time the North Korean leader used such rhetoric, with experts saying the regime often makes threats like this at times of elevated tension.
The UN sanctions slapped on North Korea seem to have provoked the reclusive regime to increase its belligerent acts. North Korea's official Korean Central News Agency reported its young leader Kim Jong-un has ordered his military to prepare to fire nuclear warheads at any time. Kim gave the command while attending the test firing of a new multiple rocket launcher. Speculation is that North Korea fired 6 short-range projectiles toward the East Sea on Thursday from this location. A U.S. defense official cast doubt that Pyongyang has ability to miniaturize a nuclear weapon, and South Korea downplayed Pyongyang's routine bellicose rhetoric.
North Korea seems to be expressing its will to counter the sanctions imposed by the UN and looking to solidify the regime.
Ahead of an annual South Korea-U.S. military next week, Kim has also reportedly ordered his military to be in preemptive attack mode, saying enemies are threatening to dissolve the regime. The North Supreme Leader went further, addressing the South Korean president by her name for the first time and claiming that her hysteria would only expedite her self-destruction. The young leader's provocative remarks indicate that tensions on the Korean peninsula will continue, especially with UN sanctions recently finalized on North Korea. In fact, the escalating tensions are a predictable pattern of behavior exhibited by Pyongyang. In 2013, after the UN Security Council imposed sanctions, Pyongyang also fired short-range projectiles in response. Recent satellite imagery of North Korea shows Pyongyang may be preparing for a rocket engine test, increasing the possibility of another surprise provocation by the unpredictable regime. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus to the domestic political arena now, at the National Assembly, ruling Saenuri Party is keen to pass a slew of key economic bills before the current extraordinary session ends next Thursday. Opposition bloc lawmakers, meanwhile, appear to be shifting their attention to preparing for April's upcoming general elections. Ji Myung-gil has more.
The ruling Saenuri Party on Friday for the last time called on the opposition party lawmakers to pass key economic bills as legislative duties have come to virtually a standstill.
We must pass economic revitalization and labor reform bills within February's extra session. Parliament has the duty to pass bills so that we don't miss a golden opportunity to help boost our economy and create new jobs.
The ruling party's top priority is to pass a bill to promote Korea's service industry and 4 labor reform bills aimed at restructuring Korea's rigid labor market. Therefore, the ruling bloc hopes to open a voting session next week to pass the key pending bills as the current parliamentary session ends on March 10th. However, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea has criticized all of the economic bills passed to date, stressing that nothing was done to help boost Korea's sluggish economy.
The president maintains that if the assembly passes certain key economic bills, it would help rejuvenate Korea's economy. But our economy is slipping into recession.
With April's election nearing, the Minju Party is unlikely to cooperate on passing the bills after the counterterrorism bill, the North Korea Human Rights Bill, and the electoral map bill gained approval. With the new electoral map finalized, Korea's political parties were busy screening candidates' credentials on Friday to make room for some fresh faces in the run-up to the election. After months of political wrangling and political bargaining, the 19th National Assembly is being called a vegetative legislature, one that is unresponsive to calls urging for passage of important bills. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Sticking with local politics, the main opposition Minju Party continues to stress the importance of forming a united opposition bloc in order to win the general elections next month. In response, the People's Party said it will hold a general meeting of its lawmakers to discuss the matter. Shin Se-min has this report.
The call for the opposition to join forces continues.
I propose opposition parties join forces to become the new majority, to lay the groundwork for governmental change at the presidential election in 2017.
The main opposition Minju Party of Korea leader Kim Jong-un said there is no obstacle preventing unity among the opposition parties, citing that the Minju camp has tried its best to maintain democratic consolidation within the party. Adding there isn't much time left until the April 13th parliamentary election, the interim leader is alluding to the idea of integrating the People's Party back into the Minju Party, not an inter-party solidarity. An Chul-soo of the People's Party, however, seemed less than interested in the main opposition camp's proposal. But the party An co-founded is divided over differing views on holding hands with the Minju Party and announced that it will hold a closed-door general meeting of its lawmakers on Friday evening to organize its stance. The minor opposition currently consists of a total of 18 incumbent lawmakers after recently welcoming a political heavyweight Park Ji-won, who was also a member of the main opposition camp. The party is competing against the Minju Party to win more votes in the metropolitan area ahead of the April's general elections. With the main opposition Minju Party of Korea's call to join forces coming just 1 month after the official launch of the People's Party, it still remains to be seen whether that proposal will eventually end up empowering the opposition forces, essentially restoring the country's two-party systems. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And now let's turn to the latest developments in the U.S. presidential race. A most welcome reinforcement for Republican candidates under the shadow of Donald Trump struggling to stay relevant. Former presidential candidate Mitt Romney highlights why the real estate tycoon is unfit for the White House. Park Jung-hong fills us in on Romney's attack as well as the seemingly unshakable Trump's response.
It was a blistering attack against the Republican frontrunner in the race to the White House. Former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney slammed Donald Trump, taking aim at what he said were his abrasive rhetoric, personal qualities, and ill-advised policy ideas.
This is an individual who mocked a disabled reporter, who attributed a reporter's questions to her menstrual cycle, who mocked a brilliant rival who happened to be a woman due to her appearance, who bragged about his marital affairs, and who laces his public speeches with vulgarity. Donald Trump says he admires Vladimir Putin. At the same time, he's called George W. Bush a liar. That is a twisted example of evil trumping good.
Romney's remarks were echoed by Republican Senator John McCain, who was a GOP nominee in 2008. Saying he shared Romney's concerns, McCain asked voters to think long and hard about whether they wanted to pick Trump as president. The divide between establishment Republicans and Trump supporters started deepening after the billionaire property developer won most of the states up for grabs in this week's Super Tuesday primaries, taking him a step closer to securing the party's nomination. The party's old guard is uneasy about Trump's plans to build a wall along America's border with Mexico and temporarily ban Muslim refugees from entering the country. Trump supporters say the mainstream figures do not reflect their concerns about illegal immigration, the sluggish economy, and what they see as America's diminishing role in the world. Reacting to Romney's attack, Trump dismissed the former nominee and tweeted, quote, "Why did Mitt Romney beg me for my endorsement 4 years ago?" Trump claims he's being treated unfairly by the Republican Party and may decide to run as an independent, taking millions of voters with him. Park Jung-hong, Arirang News.
Switching to other stories now, China's spending in defense this year will slow down, according to the country's senior officials. Hwang Jie brings us the forecast, which comes ahead of the opening of an annual key national event on Saturday that will decide the actual figures of military budget.
China says its defense budget for 2016 will rise at the slowest pace since 2010, adding the weaker growth in military spending reflects the state of its economy.
This year, China's defense budget will maintain growth, but the amount of growth will be lower than last year's, between 7 to 8%.
Although the estimate announced on Friday remains higher than China's expected economic growth target of 6.5% to 7% for this year, it's much lower than what was widely expected in military and diplomatic circles. They predicted the figure to reach an impressive rise of 20% to 30%. The defense budget has been posting a double-digit growth for the past 5 years, with that of last year increasing more than 10%. Over mounting tensions with the United States in the South China Sea, Beijing accused Washington of militarizing the hotly contested waters by deploying ships and aircraft.
Expanding construction in the South China Sea is necessary. This is something that the Chinese people support. These islands are considered to be part of our country and should be defended. Defense installations are a necessity.
The United States have conducted a so-called freedom of navigation operations near islands that China controls in the sea. China has been carrying out controversial reclamation work in the islands while stationing advanced weapons. The actual figure of China's military budget will be released on Saturday when the annual meeting of China's legislative body opens. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
We'll try to wrap up the newscast on a more lighter note. After a seemingly never-ending winter, it's finally starting to feel like spring here in Korea with double-digit temperatures. But our Oh Soo-young warns don't break out your picnic or camping gear just yet. Nationwide showers are expected over the next couple of days. Take a look.
Friday has been the warmest day of the year thus far, with the daytime temperature much higher than seasonal averages. The daytime high in the Korean capital peaked at a comfortable 20 degrees Celsius, almost 13 degrees higher than the average year, while the southern resort island of Jeju reached 22 degrees Celsius. Although warmer conditions are expected to last throughout the weekend, cloudy skies and rain are also on the forecast for most of the country. It's already started pouring in the central and southern regions. With bouts of thunder, lightning and even hail in certain regions, the rain is expected to intensify overnight and continue heavily through Saturday until Sunday morning. So you might want to put away your puffy jacket for the day, but do make sure you carry an umbrella. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching.